At this time, I'd like to recognize our President's Medal honoree. This award is given to the law school's most accomplished community members. Our honoree this year is Virginia Sher Ramadan, a member of the class of 1984. Virginia is a diplomat, a law professor, and an immigration policy advisor. She served in the United States State Department for 22 years, both overseas and in Washington, D.C., before retiring in 2017. During her distinguished career, she spearheaded significant rule of law programs around the world. As a Foreign Service officer, she led large consular and visa operations and oversaw multi-million-dollar programs related to the rule of law, security assistance, culture, and education. Most recently, she served as Consul General for the U.S. mission to Saudi Arabia. In that role, she managed consular and visa operations throughout the country during a period of sudden and extreme change in U.S. immigration policy and law. She held a number of other important diplomatic posts throughout the Middle East and Latin America, and she oversaw essential preparation for the U.S. military's withdrawal from Iraq, including securing funding to transition key criminal justice initiatives from military to civilian leadership. Virginia is also dedicated and experienced as a professor. Her teaching career includes 14 years at New York Law School, where, from 1986 to 1999, she taught property law and wills, trusts, and future interests, as well as electives in immigration law and international business transactions. From 2013 to 2015, she taught strategy and policy at the U.S. Naval War College in Newport, Rhode Island. Through her teaching and diplomacy, Virginia has shown remarkable leadership and service. We are so proud to count her among our alumni. Virginia, please join me at the podium. Thank you. Today, we honor Virginia's distinguished career representing the United States as a diplomat in unique and challenging environments, and her leadership of major initiatives dedicated to strengthening the rule of law globally. Congratulations.
Thank you, Dean Crowell, members of the board, faculty, students, family, and esteemed honorees and guests. I am so honored to have been selected to receive the President's Medal and so grateful for the transformative and academically stimulating years I spent at New York Law School as both a student and a professor. Law school always attracted me. I loved the constant learning, the analysis, and the debate. I began New York Law School after serving with the Foreign Service, and I feared I would miss the excitement of living overseas, speaking Arabic, Portuguese, Spanish, and being surrounded by foreigners who offered such a unique perspective on life. But I discovered that New York City offered such a culturally, ethnically, and economically diverse world that it proved equally invigorating. And my fellow students, just as you, came from all different backgrounds, each with his or her own reasons for studying law, and different family backgrounds, national origins, and career aspirations. And I got to learn an entirely new language, the language of law. As you can all attest, it's not easy completing law school while everything around you demands your equal attention. Particularly, just a second, this is falling up, okay. Particularly your family and your jobs. But you made it, congratulations. In my case, I was lucky to have the support of my husband, Waleed, my husband of 39 years tomorrow, who encouraged me and assumed the lion's share of caring for our 4 children, 4 born within the 7 years of my beginning law school. Please join me in a big round of applause for all the people who had our backs and helped us succeed in this incredible achievement. One of the biggest takeaways from my legal education was in understanding how the strength of our legal system impacts our legitimacy and our standing in the world, especially in the way it sets an example for all as it evolves to meet changing realities or to remedy past inequities. One of the earliest international relations scholars, Edward Carr, was the first to define the instruments of national power as military power, economic power, and the power over opinion, stressing that one instrument cannot exist for long in the absence of the other. The political scientist Joseph Nye described this power of opinion as soft power, our power to influence through our actions. Power depends on whose army wins, but it also depends on whose story wins. A strong narrative is a source of power. Our flawed but acclaimed and unmatched legal system is powerful. It is the envy of the world, as is our citizens' adherence to rules and regulations without widespread avoidance and without widespread corruption. The openness of the American culture, its respect for the rule of law, and its democratic principles have made the United States a model for millions and a refuge for those same millions, and has expanded the power of the United States across the world. However, foreign publics also view the United States with skepticism, antagonism, and fear. From my years overseas, I witnessed the dichotomy of foreigners envying our culture and seeking to emulate the United States legal system and democratic institutions, while simultaneously protesting and condemning our actions abroad, particularly when we flaunt or disregard international law. As I returned to the Foreign Service, I was eager to help influence the narrative and foreign policy of the United States while employing the legal, analytical, and communication skills I had learned at New York Law School. Perhaps the greatest advantage I gained from my legal education was the ability to think. It was at law school where I honed my mind. I learned to think carefully and logically, and express myself cogently and succinctly. These skills in diplomacy are equally essential, particularly when defending U.S. policies or attempting to convince foreign governments of the mutual benefit of the policy we espouse. Buttressed by the deep understanding I acquired at New York Law School of both U.S. immigration law and international conventions on migrants and trafficking in persons, I devised innovative visa, anti-trafficking, anti-identity fraud programs throughout the Western Hemisphere and convinced immigration officials and federal police from Brazil to Canada of the mutual benefit of all of us working together to strengthen border security and stem the surge in unlawful migration. Analyzing the causes of the trust gap in our relationship with Libya after 25 years of UN sanctions and a break in U.S. relations, I recognized the need to employ non-traditional diplomatic tools to reestablish a connection with the Libyan people, not necessarily the government, but the people. We introduced them to the America they used to love by bringing American values, culture, and educational programs to their country. Political tensions were forgotten, at least for one night, as tens of thousands of Libyans danced to the California reggae female singer of the first band allowed to perform in Libya in over 30 years. Our English language fellows established broad English language and teacher training programs in Tripoli and Benghazi, while experts worked with local universities to improve Libya's thoroughly outdated curriculum. We reopened a path for Libyans to study in the United States and brought officials and Libyan private citizens to America for international visitor leadership programs, on scientific exchanges, and for economic conferences, winning back their hearts and minds. No one who ever visits the United States and meets our citizens goes away unimpressed with our culture, our diversity, our natural beauty, our openness, and our system of liberal democracy. My experiences running large-scale rule of law and security assistance programs in Lebanon and Iraq proved that no matter how great your own institutions are, to successfully assist another country, you need the trust of that country and its local institutions, as well as the assistance of international partners who bring their own unique expertise. Our Lebanese police development program was a success, strengthening Lebanon's rule of law and institutional capability of its civilian security agencies, and particularly its national police. Our multinational program reinforced essential and universal rule of law concepts that I had been exposed to at New York Law School. Just laws must be clear, publicized, and stable. They must be applied and enforced evenly, and they must protect fundamental rights, including the security of persons and contract, property, and human rights. In Iraq, we were not so successful. Operating in a dangerous and conflict zone made outreach by our civilian trainers and experts in rule of law programs almost impossible. Courts and judges were being bombed and assassinated. Policing, as we know it, did not exist. The military controlled the streets. Corruption was rampant. Suspected terrorists were held without any rights to a hearing. Despite years of planning, we never really got buy-in from the Iraqi government, which was much less interested in establishing human rights programs or anti-corruption programs than they were in maintaining security and reestablishing their own sovereignty. My New York Law School acquired talents came into play most when working in Saudi Arabia, the country furthest removed from our legal system's protection of human rights, civil liberties, and political freedoms. Employing my knowledge of international conventions on human rights and diplomatic immunities, I drew on my powers of persuasion and leverage to negotiate ways to assist U.S. citizens subject to the harshness of Saudi's onerous and sometimes archaic family, commercial, and criminal laws. When dual national children were wrongly taken by Saudi fathers from their American mothers who were denied visitation, or when women and foreign workers and professionals were arbitrarily banned from travel without the permission of their guardians or work sponsors, we worked with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to find innovative solutions to resolve the legal impasse, including the negotiation of a first-ever agreement on parental access and children's issues with the Saudi government. But it was our own laws that proved the most difficult to defend or explain while I was in Saudi Arabia: our immigration laws and executive orders. In Saudi Arabia, our visa officers were continually confronted with the need to explain and defend our mystifying immigration policies and laws to often baffled and disgruntled foreign and U.S. citizens who couldn't understand why they or their loved ones were being denied entry into the United States or being denied a visa. I was in Saudi Arabia when the January 2017 executive order came into effect without prior warning. The travel ban created a public relations nightmare across the region and in Saudi Arabia, where over 35% of the people who worked at our embassies and consulates were from those 7 banned countries, as were 85% of our immigrants and 30% of our non-immigrant visa applicants. Saudi travelers reported increased scrutiny at the ports of entry and sought assurance that they would not be next. But because of the work you did and the subsequent protests in the United States, the quick action by lawyers and law students to come to the aid of stranded passengers denied entry and the injunctions on the initial order's implementation soothed the fear of many overseas who had always looked to us as a model for equitable application of our laws. Bravo. Our nation's greatest strength is that we are a nation of laws. After World War II, America had the wisdom to shape institutions to keep the peace and support human progress, from NATO and the United Nations and the World Bank and the IMF. We cannot abandon those institutions and our leadership of them. As our former president stated in 2014, quote, "I believe in American exceptionalism with every fiber of my being. But what makes us exceptional is not our ability to flout international norms and rule of law. It is our willingness to affirm them through our actions. American influence is always stronger when we lead by example. We can't exempt ourselves from the rules that apply to everyone else." I'd like to thank you, New York Law School, for helping me share the exceptional nature of our laws throughout my career. And my heartfelt congratulations to the graduating class of 2019.
Thank you so much, Virginia, for those very thoughtful remarks.